morning. Good morning. Can everyone hear me? No? Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Morning. Morning, everyone. Alrighty. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to Student Advocacy Day on the Hill. We are excited to have you all here today. My name is Emily Karsha, and I'm on the Student Advocacy Leadership Team, and I will be your MC for today. I want to highlight a few of the universities and regions we got represented here today, so feel free to woo, holler, whatever you want to do. So number one, we got University of North Carolina. Yeah. A big group. We got Howard University. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. University of Central Florida? Anyone? Oh, what? Yeah, okay, yeah. University of Washington? There's a few. Anyone? No? Okay, it's okay. Columbia University? Woo, okay, guys. University of Houston? That's all right. You don't have to share. It's okay. But many of you have traveled far to be here today, and we are very appreciative of your travels and your enthusiasm for the event. George Mason? Woo! Okay, thank you. Yeah. If I forgot you, let me know later. We can do more cheering. So everyone here understands the importance of advocacy and the need of social workers involved in the democratic process. And I want to go over some housekeeping items with you before we start today's programming. So women's and men's restrooms can be found in the back corner of the open area that we all were mingling in before. Unfortunately, there's no gender-neutral bathrooms on this floor, so please just use whatever restroom you feel comfortable with. And we also want to thank some people before we start today. So we wanted to get started by thanking the following people for making this day possible. Number one, the NASW, CSWE, SSWR, Chris, Dr. Lewis, UNC, Lexi West, our fearless student volunteer team leader. Round of applause there. We also wanted to give a shout out to Juan Escobar, who made the logos on the notebooks you all received and the little name tags, the voting, yeah. Very good. And then some more logistics. So we have some wonderful speakers who have graciously given their time to share with you today. And after each talk, we will open the floor up for Q&A, both in-person and online folks, because we have some of us online today, will be able to participate in the Q&A. And so for those of you in the room, there's microphones on both sides of the room, and you'll be able to stand in line and ask your questions. And then if you're joining us online, please use the Whova chat. You'll be able to use the app there and ask your questions. There's also a schedule for the day on the Whova app. If you haven't already downloaded it, I know we told you in the beginning, but please. There's a schedule there, and it will be your main source of communication information throughout the day. If you're more of a printed person, there's also a schedule of today in the little booklets you guys had outside. There should be a schedule. And then, so if you have any questions throughout the day, don't hesitate to ask any of us. All the event organizers have an orange band on our name card, and we'll be throughout if you have any questions, so you can identify us and just feel totally free to ask us anything. I will now hand the microphone over to Dr. Lewis, the director of CRIS, to say a few welcoming words.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. How are you doing? Good. I know that's hold on. It's Michigan. All right. Did we miss anybody else? Catholic. All right. Okay. UConn is here too. All right, you can. Okay, so before I get started with my formal, I want you to take a look at that building straight ahead, okay? Because that is the seat of your government, okay? People in there work for you, okay? Your taxes pay their salaries. And sometimes it gets twisted about working for who. So when you go into the building today, no, this is my government. They are here to represent me. So take that attitude with you. So I want to thank all the leadership team who participated in putting this together. So one of the things what I do is bring together leadership team, first leadership team, and throw them together to organize this event. But some of them have never, did any event planning, but this is how you learn, right? You got to do it. I don't micromanage, so everything that happens today, including the mistakes, they own. But before, I just want to give a real shout out to Lexi West. Lexi. Lexi put all of this together and got everybody working together. And listen, you can be a part of this. We want you to stay connected with Chris and what we do. We have a LinkedIn group that you can join. Hit me up on LinkedIn and I'll connect you with the group. Because we want to build, a cadre of astute, energized social workers who are working in the legislative space. We need to be there. I think you heard us talk. So without further ado, I want to say good morning and welcome to Student Advocacy. And let me begin with a simple but consequential question. What are you trying to accomplish? I'm working on a book actually, on what I'm calling the Art of Student Advocacy. That's the first thing. You have passion, all right, and you have an issue, and you want to let people know about the issue. But at the end of the day, you have to accomplish something, right? Slogan advocacy is okay because you need to get attention. At the end of the day, you need to be clear about what it is that you're trying to accomplish, all right? Not in the abstract, but the question sits at the center of effective advocacy. It forces clarity, it disciplines passion, calling it the balance between reason and passion. You have to have passion, reason. And it reminds us that advocacy is nothing. So today is about moving from voice to influence. Each of you come here as a student, but also as something more consequential, a translator between lived experience and public policy. Social workers are uniquely positioned in this space. You see up close the consequences of decisions made are from communities most affected by the decisions. You understand the human impact behind budget lines, legislative text, and regulatory choices. That perspective is not supplemental to policy. It is essential. But let's be candid. Good intentions are not enough. Evidence by itself is not enough. Even moral clarity is not always enough. Policy change occurs when insight is paired with strategy. When you understand not only what should happen, but how decisions actually get made. And that's about today. A central part of that work will happen when you walk into congressional office. These visits are not symbolic. They are substantive. You are entering spaces where decisions are shaped, negotiated, and often constrained by competing priorities. You may meet with members of Congress, but more likely their staff, the individuals who actually carry significant influence in shaping legislative outcomes. Treat those conversations with seriousness, the seriousness they deserve. Be clear about your ask. Be concise. Respect time. Tell a story grounded in real experience, but connected to a policy solution. And listen, advocacy is not a monolith. It's a disciplined exchange. The most effective advocates leave an office not only having been heard, but also having learned something about how to move the issue forward. You are not there to win an argument. You are there to build credibility and advance a relationship. You are entering this work at a critical moment across the country. We are grappling with questions about democracy, participation, and whose voices truly shape public decisions. In that context, your presence here matters. Your preparation matters. Your willingness to step into this space early in your career matters. Because advocacy is not something you wait to grow into, it is something you practice now. And let me say this clearly. Do not underestimate the power of being in the room. Let me say it again. Do not underestimate the power of being in the room. Policymaking is shaped by those who show up consistently, credibly, and with purpose. Today, that means not only being here in this space, but walking the halls of Congress, sitting across from decision makers, and making your case with clarity and integrity. So, approach this day with both humility and intention. Ask good questions, listen carefully, be precise about what you are asking for. And remember that every effective advocate learns how to connect values to viable outcomes. That is the work, and that is the opportunity. Thank you for being here, stepping forward, and for committing yourself to the hard, necessary work of advocacy. Let's get going on the Hill. Thank you. I'd like to call up Greg. Greg, are you still here? Greg, right? This is a surprise.
So, I want to do TikTok. Wave. All right, ready? We're gonna do some more wave, yell, do whatever. We're gonna start over here. We're gonna work on.
Like a phone.
And it's now my pleasure to bring to you Michael Collins. Michael Collins was a longtime chief of staff on the Hill for Congressman John Lewis. And we're really pleased to have him here to talk about, what it is to be a social worker on the Hill. Okay? He has his MSW from Boston College. Michael.
Good morning.
Ready.
Everything Charles says is right. I mean, I don't know what more to say. Honestly, I mean, he had it really to the point, to the T. I just want you to be excited. I mean, this is really a great day. It is really an exciting day. I was trying to think about what to tell you, one that Charles hasn't already told you. From my experience, as I indicated last evening, I was chief of staff and floor assistant for Congressman John Lewis for 21 years. And so I had the opportunity to sit across many of constituents for meetings. And, I just wanted to think about what I want to know, be inspired by. I thought I'd tell you a story of my very first meeting, Capitol Hill, that I took with the Major League Baseball Association. And I'm sitting there, they're telling me to just, take the meeting, Michael, listen to what they have to say, take some notes, just be in the room. And I did all of that. And then I thought, I have to say something. Hey, and I then made a comment about, I really don't follow baseball. And I thought, that was not really the smartest thing to say. So I learned from there. But what I will tell you is that, again, This is an exciting time for you to be in Washington, D.C. There's a lot at stake. It is a difficult time. There are a lot of people hurting. There's a lot of pain, a lot of anguish. What I can tell you from the perspective of members of Congress is that they are passionate about what they believe in. They care. They're trying to make a difference. What I will tell you also is that everything in the media changes from when you step foot on Capitol Hill. You'll read many articles, you'll see many headlines, but that's not necessarily so when you walk into those offices. And so you have an opportunity to change, to make great change. And I don't want to underscore that. I want you to show your passion, your purpose, and to really the values that I talked about last evening. They will listen to you. Now, sometimes you'll walk into an office and you'll get a staff person who is probably younger than you are, has had very little experience, and could be the very first meeting, and they're going to look like they don't even care. They're going to look at you and look right past you, and you still are going to show up and share what you came to discuss and talk about. And you're going to do that all day until you're exhausted. But I want you to know that you will and have made a difference just by showing up. And you will want to someday go back to that experience because it will help you formulate all of the work that you will do. You have the power to make a difference, and it's a moving time. It is a moving time. And so I just want to leave you with that. Again, it is a great day. Have fun at it. Walking through those halls. I don't know if many of you have been through Capitol Hill on, a busy day like today, this vote. There's going to be a lot of advocates up there, a lot of people on many issues. You're going to pass them in the hallways. They're up there discussing their issues as well, just as passionate as you are, and you will. So just be excited about the day and take it all in, and I wish you the best.
Thank you so much, Michael and Dr. Lewis, for your warm welcome and insights. Good news, guys, there's a lot of us in the room. So if anyone has a seat empty next to you and wants to make a new buddy, a new friend, can you just raise your hand so everyone's got seats? If not, that's also cool because there's so many of us, which is exciting. Anyone? Okay, all right, well, thank you. So next, we are honored to have Mayor Emily Jabbour from Hoboken, New Jersey, to give us a little welcome as we start today, and she will be joining us online. Oh no, I lied to you all. Sorry, we're going to Jeremy Haynes from NSAW, and then for another welcome.
Morning, everyone. Honestly, I've done a lot of Hill Days and a lot of advocacy events. They never go off without a hitch, so this was par for the course for the day. But as she said, I am Jeremy Haynes, Director of Public Policy and Government Relations, NASW. Welcome you to DC and welcome to our building. We share this with another organization you may have heard of, the American Psychological Association. But really want to highlight the importance of you being here in DC for a few different reasons. Advocacy at its core are conversations. You're going to have a lot of conversations today, and for those of you who have never done this, I assure you that the first conversation you have will not be the last conversation you have, will not be the same. You will get better as the day goes. That being said, the thing you really need to worry about and think about is, as Charles and Michael said, really having that opportunity to have those conversations and think about the issues beyond. Remind everyone that the mission of social work and advocacy is to have an impact now and in the individual. So the advocacy today will not only impact you as social work students, but impact those that actually are thinking about going into the profession. We'll talk about bills later today around student loan forgiveness, designation of social work as a professional degree. Really want y'all to think about those, about the impact that you have tomorrow. So as you're lending your voice to advocacy efforts on behalf of social work students, and the profession as a whole and the communities, I want to acknowledge that NASW is really making a lot of strides to be a proactive advocacy organization that advance a lot of different issues that impact you on a daily basis. But I also want to acknowledge that unlike state politics that some of you have been involved in, this is like writing, Capitol Hill is like writing a novel. It's a very slow, arduous process, and at the end of the day, it takes time, patience, working through a lot of complexity. Some of those ideas may come and resonate with you, social work students, because that's what you do every day. Social workers embody those principles of working through complexity, having patience, and taking the time it needs to help your clients, the individuals you work with on a daily basis. And I want to close the opportunity with this, and that only. You may be a seasoned advocate, you may have done this before, you may have not done this before. Don't feel overwhelmed. That building is very large. I started at Capitol Hill as a Hill intern 12 years ago, and I never left. I'm now a lobbyist for you, and I'm happy you're here because your voice helps elevate my voice and vice versa. Welcome today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you for being here at NASW.
Hold on, I'm getting cues.
Plan.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Jeremy. Might have skipped you in the announcements, but we underappreciate how it does for us as social workers. So thank you for those insights. We are going to continue keeping the party going with our next speaker and our keynote speaker, who is Jabri Harris. Jabri Harris is a social worker by training and an organizer by choice. Jabri has spent his career empowering others as a coach, mentor, and social worker, challenging himself to open doors for others and foster community-based solutions. He builds sustainable, self-sufficient communities through political engagement, advocacy, and empowerment. Jabri served as public policy and advocacy manager at the National Association of Social Workers, where he led policy initiatives, advocacy campaigns, and member engagement to advance social justice and strengthen the social work profession. He currently serves as Senior Director of Campaigns and Organizing at Color of Change, leading national campaigns and grassroots organizing to advance racial justice, protect Black communities, and expand civic engagement. Jabri holds a bachelor's in social work from Eastern Michigan University and a master's in social work from Howard University. Please welcome Jabri.
Hey, good morning, y'all. How y'all doing?
Good morning.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it. Let me start by honoring the people that make this space possible. Thank you to the leadership of the conference. Thank you to the faculty, the planners, the volunteer, the staff, the people making sure the mics work, making sure the coffee was hot, making sure the buses ran on time. I understood it was like a little bus issue this morning. But making sure the schedules make sense. The students get us where we need to go. I've been saying this a lot lately. One of the most important forms of leadership is holding up the roof while justice is being built. And that's what organizers do. That is what institutions builders do. That is what good leadership looks like. And I would be remiss if I don't honor Dr. Charles Lewis. I think he's in the hallway. I've called him my own head and sometimes out loud one of the godfathers of political social work because he spent time helping build spaces for this profession to understand advocacy is not extra credit. Policy is not a side quest, and civic engagement is not a hobby, but democracy is not something, not someone else's department, but it's social work's space. So thank you to CRISP, thank you to the Congressional Social Work Institute of Social Work and Policy for doing the work, doing something that should not be rare in our profession, but still giving social work students a platform, a pathway, and a political home to practice advocacy in real time. And thank you to all of you, because you didn't just travel here with your suitcases and tote bags, resumes, and comfortable shoes. You traveled here with stories. You traveled here with stories of your clients, your patients, and a myriad of spaces where you may work. You traveled here with some of the stories of the people who may never step foot on those marble floors in the hallways of the Capitol. You traveled with the lives and the decisions that's being made, impacting them every single day. And that matters. Because social workers, yes, we know how to document, we know how to assess, we know how to do that, we know how to intervene. We know the technical language and all the evidence-based frameworks that it makes us a profession. But let me tell you what really makes social work dangerous in the best possible way. We know how to gather a story. We know how to hear what was said and what was not said. We know how to notice patterns. We know how to sit with pain and how to sit with it without looking away. That is not small, that is not soft, that is not apolitical, that is power. My name is Jabri Harris, like she said, and I stand before you as a descendant of sharecroppers and revolutionaries, and an organizer and social worker and an advocate, a brother, an uncle, many different titles. But more than anything, I'm a child of a beloved community that taught me that dignity is not something you beg for. It's something that you defend. I name all those identities not because they're decorations or not because it's branding language. I name those things because they are evidence that the identity that shapes you and the world that meets you is evidence that policy is never abstract. Evidence that the systems did not fail people they do not fall on people evenly. Evidence that us forced to do this work long before anyone has handed us a textbook or has called it theory. We have lived it. I was raised and looked after my brothers and my sisters to take care of my community and do the right thing. My mother used to say these words to me all the time: I ain't raising no dummies, no liars, no fools. And that may not be in the code of ethics. It probably should be. But let me tell you what she meant by that. She meant say what you mean and mean what you say. Tell the truth. Pay attention. And don't let nobody play in your face. And don't let these systems convince you what is wrong is normal. That was my first ethical pedagogy. And in times like these, I find myself returning to that training again and again. Because this is not a neutral moment. This is not a calm moment. This is not a moment where anybody paying attention should make a mistake that chaos for coincidence. We're living in a time where books are being banned in the thousands, where public history is being pressured into public fiction or patriotic fiction, where institutions are being told to make themselves more palatable to power, where leaders come in and say that's just how things go, where airports are being used as theaters for fear and state presence. Research indicates about 6,800 books last year were banned by this administration. The White House has pressed the Smithsonian that is held here with this plane called America 250. And this week, we saw ICE agents descend upon airports across the country to fill staffing gaps of TSA, which tells you everything you need to know about how power is being staged publicly. And I need us to understand what that means. It means that the fight is not just over policy, it's over our narrative. It's over memory. It's over who gets to tell the story of this country. It's over whether harm will be named honestly or whether communities will be treated like full human beings or an administrative burden. It's over whether truth will remain public as they wash it away, hide it from us. Can't even find parts of the Constitution online no more. It's about exactly why social workers cannot afford to be timid right now. And exactly why social workers, I want to give a quick shout out to all my Howard folks in here. I'm going to run back to my girl Zora Neale Hurston, who, just like my mom reminded us, if you silent about your pain, they'll kill you and tell you you enjoyed it, quite frankly. And that line stays true to me because it talks about the violence of silence. Not just silence of individuals or our profession or institutions like we're standing in now. It's the silence of the people who know better, who's confused professionalism with politeness. And I came here today to tell you that that kind of silence is not is not needed right now. This is a time for your voice. This is the time for you to step in your power. Because your voice itself is not enough. Let me say that again for the people in the back and the people in the front who may be rewriting their Hill notes. Voice itself is not enough. If voice were enough, black people will already be free. If voice was enough, poor people would not have to explain suffering 12 different formats and 12 different times just to get health care or housing. If voice was enough, every diversity statement, would have produced equity. Every panel you went to would have produced justice. And every viral post would have produced transformation. But that's not how power works. People can hear you and still deny you. People can quote you and underfund you. People can praise your resilience and vote against your survival. So the task before us is not just to help people speak. The task before us is to help people move from voice to power. And that's the very title of this keynote, but it's also the assignment. I wanted to frame that assignment in 3 words, and I want you all to say it with me. That is to educate, empower,
Power.
and to advocate.
Advocate.
These 3 words explain how people build social change. They educate through giving context. They empower by building confidence and agency. They advocate by publicly supporting causes and policies. They're not separate lanes. They move together in real life. That is what social workers are. That is what we do. We educate, we empower, we advocate. But I want to push this one step further. We should not just educate just to inform. We should educate to interrupt lies. We don't want to empower just to make people feel seen. We want to empower so they can act. We don't just want to advocate because it's morally correct. We want to advocate so we can change conditions. And if our work stops short of changing conditions, then we have to ask ourselves the hard questions. Are we helping people heal while leaving the machinery that harms them untouched? Because healing matters, care matters, therapy matters, clinical work matters, don't get me wrong. But I'm not one of those people who thinks that real social work is the people doing the most public work. Because it's not. What I'm saying, our profession has become more comfortable with managing damage than preventing it. More comfortable with documenting harm than confronting it. More comfortable serving people than organizing them. And we've lost something that's not just politically, ethically. The NSW Code of Ethics is not subtle here. 6.01 tells us explicitly our job is to move forward social welfare by any means necessary. That's how I interpret it. And that includes our social, our economic, our political, and our cultural transformation. Not studying injustice, not describing injustice, not writing these beautiful discussions. Okay, come on now. Thank you. Get ready to crump dance up here. We don't want to just have beautiful discussion posts about injustice. We want to make sure that we're doing everything in our power to change it. That's why social work is sacred when it's at its best. And since we're in D.C., let me start by saying, or not start, but let me say this with a little bit more edge. Power already knows exactly what it's doing here. Those folks know they came here with a purpose. You don't run $1 million campaign. You know how much it costs to be in Congress? About $300,000, $400,000 a week you need to raise to stay in Congress. They know what they're doing. So the question is in this room, do we, as a profession? Because there are people in this city who know how to turn fear into budget lines. There are people who know how to turn dog whistles into legislation. SAVE Act. You got ICE literally in airports. There's people who know how to turn disinformation into national strategy. America 250. We know how to gut public institutions while smiling in a hearing. That's American is apple pie. That happens every single day. You'll see it happening today. We know how to say efficiency when we really mean abandonment. We know how to say neutrality when we really mean surrender. Who knows how to say they know how to say they're protecting children while banning books, erasing history, and criminalizing truth. And if they are that disciplined about injustice, then we got to become at least disciplined about defending people. That's where empowerment comes in. The difference between noise and voice, and even in a bigger difference, voice and power. Real empowerment is not about being visible. It's not about symbolic inclusion. It's not about being allowed to talk while someone else is in control of the money, the rules, the gatekeeping, the agenda, the outcomes. Real empowerment means people can shape decisions, influencing the resource allocation, and help build durable structures that allows democracy to stand. That is the bridge between social work and organizing. That is the bridge between compassion and strategy. So when you go to the Hill and tell that story, I do not want you to think about yourself simply, or your lived experience, or sharing your lived experience. And that phrase itself has a place, but it oftentimes gets used as a way to flatten people. I want you to think of yourself as doing something more than serious than sharing. You're naming evidence. You're exposing design. You're mapping the consequences of the decisions they are making. You're saying this policy is not failing by accident. This agency is not underperforming in a vacuum. The family is not struggling because they made bad moral decisions. These outcomes were produced. These outcomes were carefully crafted and debated upon by you folks. These conditions were built. And if y'all can build them, we can rebuild them. That's what advocacy is. And let me make it even more plainer. Advocacy is not simply asking nice. I don't ask for anything nice, quite frankly. Advocacy is organized truth-telling with the target. It's knowing who has the power to change the condition and walking into that room and telling them to change it, or else. It's knowing what they respond to, knowing how to apply the right pressure, knowing how to make the right demand at the right time, knowing how to stay in the fight after meeting, after email, after the hearing, after the polite applause. Because a lot of people like to advocate for, their own vain reasons. The outfit, I look fly. The Capitol photo is, we look good. Or that panel because it makes your CV look great. Or the quote card that's going to be shuffled around for the next week or so on LinkedIn or wherever you put your things. Or, damn, that was an inspiring conversation post on LinkedIn. And don't get me wrong, I'm my mama's child. I serve face too. I enjoy a good time. But your advocacy ends where your content begins. That's not a movement. That's simply branding. And the problem our profession is holding on to right now, we use justice as marketing language rather than thinking about power as a way that we can actually deal with the people. So some things must be visible, absolutely. But visibility is not the destination. Transformation is. The part of what I've been trying to practice in my own work at Color of Change, where we've pushed in a lot of different directions. I don't know if you're not familiar with Color of Change, feel free to look us up. I won't bore you. But we're pushing in a lot of different directions. How do we help black communities move from reaction to organized power? Sometimes it looks like direct accountability campaigns. It looks like cultural defense. It looks like story collection. It looks like petitions, press conferences, corporate pressure, local organizing. And sometimes it looks like taking something people assume is symbolic and showing them that it's actually structured. It's taking the fight to defend black history in our public institutions. When attacks came for museums, history, and truth-telling, and the truthful storytelling of this nation, we did not treat it as a side quest or a side issue. We treated it as a democratic issue. We gathered thousands and thousands and thousands of people, delivered petition signatures to the Smithsonian Board of Regents, demanding that protection of the museum's mission and the integrity, because people who come for your archive, quite frankly, they're coming for your future. They attack the way that you tell your story, the way that you see yourself, the way that history understands you. They're coming for the way that your story is going to be told in the upcoming. And that matters because culture itself is not fluff. I'll say Color of Change, we understand that culture is not a thing that you get to talk about after the serious work is done. Culture is how people remember who you are. Culture is how communities make meaning. Culture is how we transmit identity, value, possibility, and refusal. It's how we say we don't want this here. Culture is often the first place people learn what is normal, what is lovable, what is disposable, what is worth fighting for. That's why that banning authors matter. In Utah, you can't read a book by Maya Angelou in any of their K-12 schools. That's why history fights matter. As they move the Plan America 250, we have 343 national parks across this country. The plan is to dwindle it down to 70. And I can tell you right now, Medgar Evers' home, Emmett Till's death site, they won't be safe. This is why museums matter. They're the horticulture of history and culture in itself. They are places that you get to build power without knowing. This past month, I was able to take over 3,000 students and families across the country in Jackson, Mississippi, Savannah, and Detroit to the black museums in their city, drive them there, making sure that we say your history matters, having a voice and understanding what this means to you and your family matters. You being that pillar of your community, being able to talk that language matters. Because if I can control the story, I also can control the horizon of what you think is possible. And if I can narrow your imagination, I also can narrow your demands. This is why social workers should have to care about narrative. This is why we should care about, not because we want to be media critics, because narrative policy is emotional infrastructure. So let me say that again. Narrative is policy's emotional infrastructure. The vote, they vote on who they've been taught is deserving. They vote on who they've been taught to see as dangerous. This is why stories about Keith Porter matter. They refused to release the name of the man who shot him, the ICE agent who shot him off duty with a government-issued gun. This is why stories about ICE presence in airports matter. All those collection of those stories, that's not just for fodder and for a good clip of the evening news. They matter. That is what stories about black books, black parents, black children, queer children, poor people, and all the institutions who claim to serve them. They matter. Because bad policy usually arrives as this thing and dressed up real nice in some jeans and a hat and calling itself common sense. And one of the callings of social work is to expose that costume. Yes, don't be afraid to speak truth to power. You know, you may lose a little bit of money, you may lose some friends, but don't be afraid to speak truth to power. But let me turn this to you directly. You're not here in Washington to just be inspired. You're not here to intervene. You're here because your voice matters. Yes, but you're also here because your analysis matters. Your professional ethics matter. Your questions matter. And your willingness to confront power, that's what matters the most. So I'm going to give you a few truths about Advocacy Day. First, social workers, we ain't neutral. Regardless of what some folks or some institutions have told you, we ain't neutral. I know people love to act like neutrality is maturity, but I can assure you it surely is not. Taking a position is somehow less professional. Like, they want to convince you, we're neutral. Taking a position is less professional, but that's not the truth. Pretending harm is complicated when it's actually clear is actually dangerous. But there is no neutral stance in the face of dehumanization. There is no ethical neutrality when people's housing and health care, education, their benefits, their safety, their bodily autonomy is on the line. There's no neutrality between history and erasure. There is no neutrality between democracy and disenfranchisement. There's certainly no neutrality between care and cruelty. But I beckon you to be thoughtful, to be rigorous, to be strategic, nuanced, but not ever neutral. None of you actually understand the code of ethics you so boldly claim. So the code of ethics, I'm sure all your professors force you to put in every paper at the end. You know, it's not just that last paragraph. It's like, damn, I gotta get this in there. The code of ethics that shapes the work that we do every single day. We're in every field. We're not just in the Hill. Quite frankly, that's just I call DC a town of old high school presidents who finally got to work out, and now you cool a little bit. But it's the communities you serve. It's how power works. Second, care and organizing belongs together. If you don't believe me, look at the White House. That's power without care. Or look at your local nonprofit that loves everybody but can't keep the doors open. That's care without power. There is a false divide that has harmed our profession for a very long time, and I'll be hard pressed to believe that people are doing this intentionally. Because some people act like care is soft and organizing is hard. Like emotional is one thing and one is strategic. Like therapy is happening in one room and power is sitting next door, and they should never meet, because if they do, it gets crazy. Because it does get crazy when they do meet. When they meet, it looks like what happens in Twin Cities. When they meet, it looks like cities burning down. Look at the 60s and 70s. Some of those cities still haven't been built. When they meet is having the audacity to start an organization in the face of a government saying, we don't care about you. We see blatantly that you don't care about black people. Hurricane Katrina. So, and I always have understood that is foolish, is to make sure that you take the two apart from each other, because we need both. We need social workers who can sit with grief and also read a budget. We need social workers who can de-escalate crisis and identify a target. You need someone who can build rapport, but also build a coalition. We need someone who can hear the pain in the family story and then have the audacity to trace back the legislative patterns behind it. Who can testify to the facts and still sound like a human being. Understand those combinations are rare, but social workers are not only caretakers, they're power builders. They're conduits of accountability and they're truth tellers. Third, I want you to remember that real power requires institutions. Now, let me say this, it may make a few of you uncomfortable. Maybe not, because you're students. We still got that radical spirit. I'm young at heart. But not a lot of people who are very good at criticizing institutions. There are a lot of people who are very good at criticizing institutions, but some of that criticism is right, some of that criticism is needed. Because a lot of our institutions simply have failed us, and they deserve that scrutiny. But throwing stones is a lot easier than holding up the roof. I can promise you that. Real power requires infrastructure. It requires organizations, relationships. It requires leadership. It requires strategy. It requires a home for the work. A place for people to gather, train, and coordinate, disagree, refine, decide, and then act. And if you do not know how to build that, then you do not know how to sustain power. There's a difference between standing outside the building and pointing at what's wrong and carrying the responsibility of helping to build and transform something that can actually distribute power. So folks in this room, students, professors alike, I need you to hear me. Don't spend your whole life becoming brilliant critics with no organizational muscle. Don't become fluent in the language of oppression while being allergic to the hard, slow, disciplined work of building alternatives to that oppression. Don't let social media trick you into thinking that outrage is strategy, because it's not. I'm going to tell you that right now. Outrage is not strategy. Sometimes it's a spark, sometimes it's a signal, and sometimes it's the necessary emotional truth, but strategy it is not. Strategy is what turns that spark into sustained pressure. Strategy is what turns that into structure. Strategy is what turns our stories into policy. Is what turns communities into power. And folks, popular culture is not separate from political education. Let me put that in language that we all understand. We love when K-Dot was coming for Drake. I enjoyed it myself. Body all over the floor. I enjoy a good reunion show. I'm a Nene Leakes fan. I can't wait to turn 43. No, I just like everybody else am trying to decide what is Beyonce gonna put in the next album. No,
I stood there too, and I said, Jamal Bryan, you are a fool. You know, I still have my Twitter account. and Josh could attest, you know, as I'm good for a hot take in a group chat. I love a good meme, man. Like, everybody does. You know, and all this matters, all of it. And, you know, I tell folks, and the folks that understands culture, understand people, that's all good, because popular culture tells us something about how people are processing power. Through all those things, it tells us who gets protected, who gets mocked, who gets believed, who gets called too much, who gets called a genius, who gets the forgiveness of the public, who gets surveillance. Do not underestimate what culture teaches you, or us as a whole. People are being politically disciplined all day long by the stories, their images, their clips, the posts, all those things. Even the aesthetic. Which means we better come up with a better public pedagogy if we want to stay and be competitive, if we want to make the change that we say we want to make. People, especially young people at heart or, you know, in chronological age, are already learning from digital activist spaces. I can guarantee you, raise your hand if the last news story you got was from your social media. My whole organization, I have a whole channel for highly trained individuals who are tracking social media every day. What are the people talking about? We want to be on the ground with them. Because that is our work too. Not just to react to what is trending, but to teach people how to read the trend. What is that digital blackface telling you? You know, teach people what the story is actually trying to tell. What power is normalizing. What possibility is actually being opened. That is why social workers can talk about Medicaid and also talk about those viral clips. Why social workers can talk about child welfare and talk about how it influenced the movie. Precious, everybody gotta watch this sometimes in the DSW. Don't you all become professors, don't make your students watch Precious. You know, a social worker can talk about policing, but also talk about what fuck the police means. Because all of this is a part of our public moral education. And it's right about organizing through culture, through myth, through nostalgia, sometimes fear. You know, we better stop acting like data alone is going to save us. That quantitative methods, don't get me wrong, is a tough class and it makes a lot of sense. But those numbers ain't gonna save us alone, because you'll see it today. They look at numbers and tell you you're lying. They look at numbers and say, I don't know what this means. You know, it's because your story, you've heard me say this already, your story matters. But it's not yours alone. When you tell a story in the advocacy meeting today, I want you to remember that you are not just a person with feelings. You are a witness. You are the translator to your community. You're someone who's seen the patterns and know that it's bigger than just one case. So I want you to tell your story with dignity. Make the point that this is not just an emotional plea, but this is a plea to make sure that you are here to make sure they are being accountable to the people they are here to serve. And I want you to think about this. Every Hill meeting, every hearing, every single legislative meeting you take today, or ask yourself, what is my framework? And some of the framework, when I look at an issue, I tap into, I ask myself, who is being harmed? That's the first thing I ask. Who's being harmed? Who holds the power to change it? Do I need to vilify them, or do I need to make them my friend? And what are we asking them to do? That's it. It comes down to those simple three questions. Who's being harmed? Who has the power to change it? And what are we asking them to do? And I beckon you folks to make sure that you leave every place with a very clear ask. And that ask doesn't have to be polite, because sometimes you're polite with your ask, it disappears. Don't have to be rude either. You know, play your game. But ask like the stakes are real, because they are. And if somebody in that meeting tries to turn your community into an abstract thought, bring it back to the ground. Bring it back to the person who is at the center of the harm. I don't know what fields we're all in. I guarantee you there's a myriad and a litany of them in this room. but rather that is your housing, your classroom, your patient. Bring it back to the person who is the center of that harm. That's where your truth lies. Now, I want to speak to the students in the room because not so long ago I was one too. The ones who are tired, the ones who are surviving grad school, field placement, bills, burnout, maybe family obligations, racism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, maybe some grief, maybe all of the above. I want to speak to those folks in this room who love the profession and is already afraid of what's asking of them already. Y'all got me. I want to speak to the folks who are wondering if they have enough stamina, enough skill, enough hope, the audacity. Hear me clearly. You don't have to leave here today with everything figured out. You don't need to be the perfect advocate overnight. You don't need to have every legislative detail before you speak. You're not going to become a miniature senator by 2 o'clock. But what you do need to do is decide what kind of social worker you want to become. Because that part can't wait. So I think I talked to a few of you folks. A lot of you folks are graduating in May. You may have another year to you. And this is the part you want to sit with yourself. If you are up at late at night and asking yourself these serious questions, you want to ask yourself, are you the kind of social worker who wants to make systems more comfortable or the kind who wants to make them more accountable? Are you someone who want to explain the harm in a very eloquent way in all of our big words using the King's English? Or are you the kind of folk that's going to organize around it and meet people where they are? I'm from Detroit. We say what up, though. When we say hello. Are you the kind of social worker who uses ethics as decoration? Or are you the kind who makes sure that those ethics demands the life that you want to see around you? Are you the kind of social worker who mistakes access for power, or the kind of one who makes sure that folks have power to make the things they bring the things that they need? That's your real field exam. Your field exam never leaves you. Well, you're always in the field, quite frankly. That is a real comprehensive exam. That is bigger than the LC test that you're going to have to take 5 different times to make some couple organizations some money. But it's not rather you can memorize terminology. Nobody can. Your professors can. It's rather you can keep your moral clarity in a profession that would often reward compliance more than they reward courage. And let me say this to you. Some of you are going to enter institutions that are imperfect. Some of you already are in them. And I know it. It's exhausting. But don't be naive about it. Don't become cynical either. Cynicism is not wisdom. It's disappointment without strategy. Simple as that. Anybody can be pissed off. And what we need is not just simple naivete. We need disciplined imagination. We need the ability to see what it is and tell the truth about what it is. We need to stay organized toward what must be. That is what our ancestors did. That's why they built schools that no one told them that they needed. That's why they created mutual aid programs when the state abandoned them. Churches, unions, civic organizations, freedom schools, neighborhood associations, co-ops, legal defense funds, political formations, professional networks. They did not wait for permission. They believed that this is the way of structure. And we dishonor that lineage when we make social work too small. This profession is older and bigger and more radical than some people or some institutions allow it to be. Social workers are some of the best organizers I've ever seen in this country. I lead. Well, you don't. Yeah, give yourself some credit. Y'all look like you're not organizing. At Color of Change, I have about a $10 million organizing budget. I have about a $10 million comms budget. So I intentionally bring social workers in that space because I know what I want to execute a plan. If I want something to be felt, I know what I want to get Lindsey Graham on the phone. I'm going to bring those people with me. I know my team knows how to do it because they are based in social work. And the good news is this, y'all. It's not too late. If you ain't got it yet, it ain't too late. It's not too late for social workers to remember who they are. It's not too late for students to widen the imagination of the profession, because that's what you do in this space. Push every chance you get. Make them tell you no. Sometimes be that annoying person. In fact, I think that's the assignment of the next generation, not generationally in terms of chronological age, the next generation of social workers coming through this door, this cycle. To refuse the small version of social work, the version that treats justice like a niche interest, the version that is afraid to say it is genocide in Palestine. The version that treats organizing like an extracurricular activity. The version that treats black history, queer history, labor history, disability justice, abolitionist, imagination, immigrant struggle, community defense, and somehow is outside of the field. All of that is our field, because social work is about people. And we know this firsthand. People live in systems. Systems are political. Politics are shaped by culture. And culture is contested by power. That is the whole thing, folks. Now, before I come to a close, and I'm about talking for a hot second, I want to make sure when you walk into those meetings, I'm going to give you something to hold on to. Walk in there grounded. Walk in those as someone who has the right to be there, because you do. Don't shrink because someone has a title. They don't mean anything. I can tell you, they ain't that smart over there. And don't confuse their office with moral authority. They don't have it. You do. Don't let a building intimidate you from forgetting what brought you here. What's in your heart, what's make you want to move, what makes you want to show up. You know things that they don't know. You've seen things they can't imagine. You carry the evidence they can't get from a briefing memo. You understand the consequences that do not show up in a spreadsheet. I want you to speak like someone who knows the community have already paid too high of a price for the political delay. I'm going to give a little bit pushback because it's not novel writing over there. That's a myth. That's what people want you to believe, to make you slow down. They're going to move when power tells them to move. Because Donald Trump left the Smithsonian when I brought 70,000 people to tell him, you ain't doing that, bro. He left. That's why he moved on to national parks. If you don't have the courage and the audacity to say that. So I'm going to tell you folks, remember in those meetings, advocacy is not one conversation, it's a practice. It's a discipline, it's a muscle. It's a commitment, it's follow-up. It's to stay connected, it's to track what they said. But more importantly, right now, look to the left of you, look to the right of you. Before you leave today, make a new friend. And if you're sitting next to somebody that you know, go talk to someone that you don't. Because these are the people in the room that's here to go make them listen. This is your community. These are the people you're going to stand hand in hand with. I don't celebrate Ben Franklin too often. But I do use his quote in a lot of my meetings to the point sometimes my staff says, shut the hell up. If he looked around, they were building this Jeffersonian version of democracy. He said, if we don't hang together, we're all going to hang together. Like I said, I don't celebrate them often, but I'll give you when you got it. Hey, I was like, you got a line. But it tells people this, like our community is going to be a culture, and community is what makes people change. That's what brings power to its knees. That's when those people start listening. When you come in, you put those numbers, they got them all on the page. Every office over there actually has a social worker. They call them caseworkers. They don't know that they are. But it's your stories. It's the community. It's the people that you do it for. It's the people that hold you up when things go down. Because life happens. Life happens. It's gonna beat you up sometimes. It's gonna smile in your face. You just gotta smile back and keep going. But it's the people that's to the left and to the right of you that you're doing it for. And it's the communities that you get to go back to. That's why you're there. But with that charge, I also want you to bring others along, because I know for a fact I stand on the shoulders of so many unsung heroes. We oftentimes talk about the march to Selma to Montgomery or Birmingham, my apologies. We talk about the Montgomery boycott. We talk about our historic leaders. You know, we talk about I Have a Dream. We talk about Whitney M. Young. But we don't talk about the domestic care worker who walked 15 miles both ways because she had the audacity to believe that her dignity was worth more than the $2 in the convenience. So I stand here on the shoulders of those aching feet, of those people. And that's why I show up in the work, to make sure I know that I leave folks with the point that that they have to be organized because the other side, they have to stay organized because the other side is just as organized as we are. That's what good movement spaces do. They stay organized. But when you stay organized, it sends you back to your community sharper, cleaner, bolder, more connected, more dangerous to injustice. Because social work is a dangerous profession, but who do you want to be a danger to? Injustice or your people? So I'm going to leave you with the charge. When you go back home, think about the issue that keeps you up at night. Whatever it is, ask yourself, who's being harmed? Who holds the power to change it? And who's willing to help you build, not just willing to post about it? What are you willing to build? Because building community is beautiful, but transforming community into power is the work that we need to do. Social workers at our best are supposed to know how to do that. So when the next generation studies this movement, I don't want them to say that we were present, because we here, we in the room where it's happening, but passive. I'm like J. Cole. I don't want a picture of the president. I just want to speak to him. I don't want them to say that we were informed but inactive, compassionate but compliant. I want them to say that we understood the assignment. That's when history was under attack, that we defended the truth. That when communities were being abandoned, we organized with care. That when power tried to disappear people, we made them visible and unignorable. That when institutions failed, we fought to transform them or build better ones. That when country demanded a silence, social workers spoke. They didn't just speak, they spoke loudly, they spoke clearly. And when we were speaking, and when speaking wasn't enough, social workers organized. Because your voice matters. But may your voice become strategy. May your strategy become organization, and may your organization become power. But more importantly, may your power be used in service of the people. So I beckon you to go to the Hill and tell the truth. Go to the Hill and make the ask. Go to the Hill and remember who sent you. Go to the Hill and act like social work belongs in the fight for democracy, because it does. And lastly, I want you to go forth and organize until justice is real. Thank you. Okay. Please sit. I think I have like 10. Thank you very much. I have about 10 minutes. 10 minutes for questions, so feel free to fire them off. I think there's mics here and here. Go ahead. You eager? Go ahead, girl. I'm good. How you doing? Go ahead, Firebird. Come on now.
So I wanted to know, how do you get into I'm curious to know, how do you get into with the politics to voice our opinion about the I'm from Washington.
Yeah. Okay, and we just gotta get you a mic then, I see.
I just want to know, how do I get to that table?
You know, they work for you. So you can email them after the meeting. You guys gotta show up and be persistent.
Okay.
Everybody in my city councilman, I live in Ward, newly Ward 7. You know, everybody in that district office knows me by name. I call them once a week, you know, and get to know who the kids, family, X, Y, and Z. You build relationships. That's what us as social workers we do. We build relationships. So that's how you get into that room. Dr. Lewis will tell you, my first year at Howard, I wanted to intern for him. They didn't let me because I didn't have the experience. And what I did that summer, I made sure I went to every single office as many times as I possibly could, and I built those relationships. I came back second year, I got to work for Dr. Lewis here at Chris, which allowed me to be in a lot of different spaces and liaison in different ways. But it's a concerted effort about building relationships. And that's what we do as social workers anyway. A large chunk of my work, I don't just work with politicians, I work with corporations, I work with everyday people. When I walk into the boardroom of Goldman Sachs and I say, I don't like that you got DEI. And they say, you can't do nothing about it. Okay, cool. See, we raised you one. It's about building those relationships, about understanding where your power actually is. And if you want it that bad, you're going to do it anyway. So. Turn up. He got to be your representative if we get it all right.
So definitely, I'm starting with him. So.
I love that.
I just want to make sure we're in the right direction.
Well, I appreciate you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Anel. I'm from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
Go ahead.
I
Y'all fired Hubert Davis. I don't know if I like that. You know.
I wanted to ask, as you had mentioned, of standing almost on the shoulders of the people before you, and as you've been a social worker, more experienced than us, I wanted to ask how the successes and the failures that you've had with transforming community into power, just some examples of how we can be able to implement that and bring it forward.
Yeah, I won't bore you with my arduous resume, because I've never been one to believe that your title actually means a damn thing. Quite frankly, when I was here, served as the public policy and advocacy manager, I think, but I drove policy here for NSW. I was a thought process around it. Your title doesn't mean anything. Your audacity does. I've served as a legislative director in the State House. I worked as a deputy political director on a presidential campaign, a major one. I worked for the DNC. In every space I went in, I let them know I'm a social worker. And my pedagogy comes from the principles of social work. Making sure that I bring folks along the way with me. Anytime I get some space, there's going to be 2, 3 funny named people, according to Eurocentric standards, coming with me. And it's about making sure that you leverage your power for other people. Because the person who was walking that 15 miles both ways, she don't know me. And she probably wasn't thinking of me. Well, she was thinking of me. She didn't want me to not have to sit on the bus, just be able to sit where I want to. So that's how we show up. We show up with our lived experiences. Like I said, people try to use that as a way to flatten what we do, that we do, making the care profession seem more radically feminine than it actually is. It's about taking care of our community. It's about making sure that you bring folks along. There's a proverb or a term that we use in Afrocentric understanding called Sankofa. So having the understanding that everything I do, I didn't get here on my own. So it's my responsibility to go back home. Every chance I get, I take a program back to Detroit. Every chance I get, I try to reach out to a Howard student. Every chance I get, I make sure that we are building power and we are building a powerful social worker. So, and that's, I was just bold enough to say, you can't kick me out. Try your best to build the relationship. It's all about relationship building too. That's the bring people along with power.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Abear. I'm a macro MSW student at Catholic University.
Turn up.
As I've been a student, I've been finding that a lot of people are really categorizing themselves as like either macro or micro. There's really becoming a division in the field. Do you have any recommendation for how to bring the micro to macro and how to bring the macro to micro?
Yeah, of course. Every space, when you are giving direct practice, whether you have your own private practice or you are a clinician, you're doing all three, quite frankly. Because when I identify as a macro social worker, if I was to put a label on myself, when I was here at NSW advocating for social workers to get a raise, I don't practice like that, No, so that policy influences how you practice. It influences how You talk to people. Influence if you have a job. When they're cutting DHHS funding, when there is a cultural understanding that we have such a sense of individualism that we don't need each other anymore, where does your job go? This is why I make sure folks understand that we, as a profession, we started teaching people how to use social justice as marketing language for our practices. Compact, if you're going to be real about it, Compact is really about making sure that rich people get more money. And it has been coined in this profession to say, oh, equal access. That's not true. It's about making sure rich people get more money. If I'm a practitioner in California, I want to dabble in New York too. If I'm in Massachusetts, I want to go down to Alabama because I provide better services because I have better access to care here. So it's about understanding. It's going to take the shift of you folks who are in those classrooms, because this is an academic shift that has to happen. Just like we shifted that to this space in the early the turn of the century. There's a social worker, I don't know if you folks know her, but her name is Brenda Capin, who made sure that the profession start looking at our woes economically as a society as a societal woe, rather than us that was moral turpitude. That was, you broke because you bad. That's what society teaches us now. Inviting the profession to shift that mindset. Because every single day, rather I am directly talking, when I'm in a meeting with a board member from a big organization who can't stand my guts, but they know they have to listen to me because we will impact your bottom line, I'm using my micro skills. I'm a BSW, so I'm trained in that space too. I'm mental health trained. When I'm in a meeting, and Dina and Rachel, they'll be here in a second, I can tell you I'm using those social work skills to talk to those folks across the street. Sometimes they just don't get it. You gotta, we'll start listening and listen to what they're not saying. So I would invite you and everyone in this room who's had the audacity to come here, if you are direct practice, just to get this experience, to take it back to your friends and say, you need to be just as concerned about those bills because those policies, because that's going to determine how you get paid. And Mezzo, quite frankly, is how y'all get clients to come here in the first place. So because the causation of getting folks into that space is the Mezzo space. And how micro and macro come together, that happens every single day. We just don't name it. Like I tell people all the time, everybody is an organizer, quite frankly. Right? If you are the leader of that group chat, if anybody in this room has ever got your friend vacation out that group chat, you an organizer with some serious tenacity at that. We just didn't give it the technical jargon, the technical term. So that's what you have to do. You need to start naming it. I'm not a micro social worker. I don't go in there and say, I'm a mental health practitioner. I am. But I go in there and tell them I'm a social worker. How can I help? I was joking earlier, I'm giving a keynote today, but before, Dr. Lewis was like, hey, take these coffees down to people in the front desk. Cool, that's what you do. Working on I was a deputy political director for Mayor Pete's campaign, and I go, and one day you're unloading water, the next day you walk in the principal to concede to Joe Biden. So it's about taking off the badge, taking off the ego. I know who I am, I don't need you to give me a pat on the back to tell me I'm great at what I do. You gotta have the confidence to say that so. And when you have the confidence to say that so, it allows you to migrate in all three of those spaces. So you don't need the invisibility cloak of, I'm a direct practice social worker, I don't have to get into that. I'm macro, I don't need to know that term. You're a social worker, you should. So that's why I'll leave it at. Any others? What's up, big time? We get a mic for my guy? Okay, let's real quick, that suit fly. That jacket fly.
Appreciate that. So my name is Aubrey Scott. I'm a second-year student. I'll be graduating in May from Howard University School of Social Work. No. And my question surrounds artificial intelligence and I guess just the ways that we can operate ethically and just, I guess, ensure that we're using and integrating AI systems into our work as social workers. And like I said, remaining ethical to our practice.
Yeah, so how did folks get here today? They walk here, they take the bus, they drive. Okay, you took the bus, you drove. Those are all tools to get you to where you need to go faster. The cotton gin didn't make them get rid of slaves. It was a tool to make the job faster. AI itself is a tool. And the reason why we're seeing so much blackface and ridiculous things coming out of Sora is because we tell poor communities when these things become commercially accessible that that's bad for you. Don't use it. It rots X, Y, and Z. It's about using this tool in a way to make sure that your community benefits from it. We see the environmental factors. That's my biggest concern. I can care less about whether you have AI write an email for you, whether you have AI synthesize data. That's no different than all who have their GAs writing their papers, quite frankly, and putting their name on it. I've written a number of speeches that I never had my name on it. There's all, I've written a lot of standing ovations that they never knew I wrote. It's no different, quite frankly. But our responsibility is to take away from that JV conversation to say, does AI now allow us to have a conversation about how we're going to take care of our communities when jobs leave? By 2056, this is a fact. We can sit here and hug each other, say boogeyman, argue about how you use it in your practice. Cool. By 2056, 80% of our tertiary sector jobs will be gone. You know what the #1 job in 21 states is? Truck driving. In 10 years, that job will be obsolete. I'm from Detroit. I'm from Michigan. I remember NAFTA very clearly. They didn't start saying, at least we not Detroit until after NAFTA. Because Detroit was the first black middle class. We were able to step into those jobs. And when automation and things started to move on because it makes much more sense for the bottom line. What we're seeing right now in corporations, it makes more sense for the bottom line. We see DoorDash using their workers to teach their AI to get rid of their jobs. It's our job as social workers to fight through the costume, fight through the fodder, fight through that space to allow ourselves, it's an editing tool. If you don't know how to read, you're not going to be able to use it effectively in the first place. If you don't have the foundational understandings of what this means as a practice, you won't be able to use it right in the first place, and that's why you keep getting caught on your papers, because you don't know how to edit it, because you don't have the foundational understanding. Oh, my bad. Oh, here we go. Oh, my bad. So y'all got me online. Hopefully y'all hear me. Like I'm saying, to say it very plainly, very clearly, AI is a tool. And the way that we ethically bring it into our profession is that we usher it in a way that makes sense. And that's why I say you have to have institutions for you to come around the table to decide, disagree, yell at each other, ugly cry, and bring it back together and come forward with action. So that's going to be bigger than me, how we decide that space. But I can tell you right now, the way that we should position AI in our organization, yes, we talk about how the importance it is to our culture to impact around digital blackface and making sure that we are informing these systems of why this is bad. But it's also just as important to talk about the people that's going to be displaced from it. Because, quite frankly, some of your professors' jobs are going to be gone. Universities are institutions who care about their bottom line. By 2056, and that's what I'll leave us with, and I will let you folks be able to have that decision for yourself, because we can get into a universal basic income conversation, but I know that's hot and touchy sometimes. By 2056, 80% of our tertiary sector, which meaning the jobs that we call unskilled, jobs that we deem not necessary, but they were essential during COVID, will be gone. And what are we gonna do? How's your practice going to respond to that person who's made $300,000 a year for the last 20 years with a high school diploma, and they don't know where to turn because they want to kill themselves now because they don't know what to do? What are you going to do when that person comes in and say, I can't feed my children, I don't have the skills, that job is gone? We can spend this time right now debating how we send emails, or we can spend this right now planning, using just how they use the crack epidemic to inform how you use opioids now, because when black people were dying, they would send them to prison. White people dying, we send them to rehab. So we can use that conversation right now to be punitive in our academic ivory towers. Or we can use that conversation to talk about what it actually means to real people. Because AI has been doing this for a long time. If anybody ever used this, you young in here, I don't know, y'all know T9 texting, or any instant output that you get. MySpace, you know, my generation, we was mini coders before, you know? So I see I got some praise back there. So we can use this time right now to shift this conversation and broaden it and do what social work does. Talk about what we ain't willing to talk about. Because it's easy to talk about, you know, was it plagiarism? It's easy to do that. No, we know that. We know that framework already, and it fits into the framework that makes us more money. But it does not fit into the framework when we have a justified, broad conversation about what the implications of this tool will mean to humanity. So I'll leave it at that. I don't want to make it more complex than it already is. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Soraya. I go to UDC. I'm a junior.
Okay, Firebird.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, you talked a lot about ethical values during your speech. Okay, so have you ever been in a place where an organization or a company didn't align with your ethical values or your personal values,
Yeah.
and how did you deal with that?
I left. You know, I tell this story all the time. Dr. Street's one of my best friends. I love him to death. Talking to him every day. When working at NESW got in the way of my own personal pedagogy of how I get to call out this bullshit administration, how I get to call out the woes, how I get to talk about genocide, how I get to show up for my community, the people I care about most. My job every day is to build black and brown political power by any means necessary. Whether that means walking into a corporation, whether that means walking into an institution, whether that means speaking truth to power. Sometimes you got to take that pay cut. Sometimes I didn't, but you know. No, but it's about, are you willing to do what you say you're going to do? Like I said, my mama said I ain't raised no dummies, no liars, no fools. I try to live up to that every day because Janae Avant will beat my ass. So when people slap you in the face and you sit there and take it, they're going to tell the world that you loved it. So you got to decide how many times you want to get slapped before you leave. Not one, because I fight back. No. I'm from a big family. Anybody beat my ass, I can tell you that. Any other questions? We got one over here. Oh, my bad. Go ahead. Oh, okay. Oh, my bad. So, folks, I will be here for a large chunk of the day before you folks take off. If you have questions, feel free to come talk to me. I'm a real person. I don't bite. And I appreciate you folks for being here, and thank you very much for your audacity. And I...
Alrighty, thank you so much, Shabri. I think we can all agree that the energy in this room definitely got elevated during that presentation, and your insights reminding us to use our stories because they matter in our profession to move the needle forward were very insightful. So next, what are we going to do? We're going to have our first training of the day to kind of move from this kind of inspiration to tangible skills that you can use when you're in these conversations later on with our Congress members. So we are going to hear from more folks at Color of Change, specifically Destiny Newell, and they're going to talk about like tangible skills that you can learn, and they will be joining us online. So, go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all for having me. Following up behind Djibouti is a hell of a task. I am going to train you all today. 1 second, I have an echo. I need to figure out what that. I'm wondering if you guys can see on your side. Okay, that works for me. Okay, much better. All right, welcome. My name is Destiny Newell, and I am a senior campaign organizer here at Color of Change. I've been here for the last 6 years, and I'm gonna lead you all through an empowerment lab, training on storytelling. Our voice is our power. Storytelling 101. This is the very, I would say, basics in storytelling. There are definitely more layers and more elements to this pedagogy, but this is my way of breaking it down and making it real and tangible for folks. We're going to have a quick welcome. We'll do our storytelling training, and then we'll get into a crafting workshop, an opportunity for folks to actually really get on the bike. Some of my best stories have been in these type of settings and spaces that have just challenged me to think about what story I have to tell and share. And so I'm asking you all to do the same. And we're going to talk a little bit about activating our power through our stories, and we'll do a quick review and closing. I recognize I only have 30 minutes of your time, so I'm hoping that I'm able to leave you all with things that you can think about and the wheel spinning to begin crafting powerful and impactful stories. At the top of the call, I always like to start with some community agreements. I know we have a large room. I was able to see a pan out of the space, and so there's a lot of folks in the space. I ask that we respect everyone's story. We support each other in our growth and encourage one another, and that you commit to getting on the bike and trying it out. And so I always like to start my story with a quick icebreaker. Feel free, I don't mind coming off mute to hear this. I'd love to numbers in the room. But how old were you the first time you stood up for something and used your voice in a big or small way? I was probably 9. I was 9. I'd love to hear from folks in the room. Awesome. Well, I hope you guys are thinking about that. You're going to take this into maybe some of your storytelling crafting later on in this session. Many of you all heard from Jabri a little bit about color change, but I like to start our calls and our trainings with the quick framing. Color of Change is the nation's largest online racial justice organization, and we're powered by millions of members across the nation who join us to take action and support our campaigns that are really fighting to leverage the power of people and narratives to hold government and corporate actors accountable. We move real solutions for racial justice, and we fight every day to create a more fair and human world for Black folks in America. And so I'm going to get into a little bit about personal stories and why we tell our stories. And so I'm going to start with a storytelling, a pre-recorded story that I shared a couple years ago, but I felt like it fits the setting of the room and it can open us up for getting into our crafting session. And so we're going to go ahead and watch this video. Hey y'all, my name is Destiny and I'm a proud product of public schools from Kansas City all the way to Los Angeles. My early educational years were probably the furthest cry from what you would consider an endless possibility, but they taught me a lot of things and I learned a lot of lessons. And looking back as an adult, I can really see how important that 6th grade literacy curriculum was, where I was able to read books like Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, that would forever shape me and mold me into the person that I am today. I remember the first time that I actually realized school boards were important and that they were making these type of decisions when I was in college and I opened up my laptop to see Kansas City School District had closed 28 schools. I instantly thought, how could this be good for the community? How could this be something that is going to help and support these students? And I started to think about all these solutions and think about everything I was going to do. But the reality was I was in college, I was in California, and there really wasn't much I was going to be able to do at this point. So I remember closing the tab and saying, one day I'm going to do something about this. Well, today, I am a mother of 2 children who are navigating this public education system. And I'm here to tell you that my student deserves a quality education, to be taught accurate history, and to be prepared for college and not prison. Stand with us today as we continue to amplify stories of our students and our families across the country as we continue to defend Black history. And so that is just a quick example of a narrative, but we're going to get into this a little bit more. And so we're going to go into crafting our personal narrative and those elements. And so when you think about crafting your personal narrative, you have your three areas that you should be focused on. And that is, especially when we're thinking about storytelling for change. And so you have your head, your heart, and your hands. And so your head, that's the part, the intellect, the engagement. Your heart are the emotion and the intelligence. The emotional intelligence and just the feelings. And the hands are the practical. What did you do? What were those implementations? And so when you're thinking about your story, you want to ensure that you're bringing in that hand, head, and heart, and centering your personal narratives in this. One second. And so the three key elements to crafting your story are going to be your plot, your emotions, and your moments. If you think back to my story, you may have heard some of the plot. Your plot is really going to be broken down into your challenge, your choice, and your outcome. The emotions are going to be either what action you took, or maybe you didn't take action. In my story, I clearly did not take action at 18 when I saw the problem. But as a mother later in life, I felt the need to begin, taking action on this issue around school boards. And so I was leading a training for other parents and teaching them how to share their narrative at a school board. And so thinking about, what emotions, what values, what feelings do you want people to experience when they're hearing your story? And I think one of the biggest things, we are people of stories. Storytelling is hardwired. And so thinking about what makes you captivated when you hear a story. Is it the vivid detail that makes you go, oh, I can relate to that? Or is it somewhere? But I think one of those bigger things is being able to show versus tell. And so I'm going to get a little bit more into first piece of that structure is the challenge. And so you want to think about, what is your challenge? Why was this a challenge for you? And how did you feel about this challenge? For myself in my own story, I think the challenge was that I recognized, school boards were making decisions that. And so it made me feel hopeless at first. And then, as I reflected years later, it made me begin to connect dots and think about how I can be, you care, they cannot, is not clicking, it's not resonating. So thinking about and ensuring that you're able to share that piece of the storytelling. And I think one of the biggest framing, we sometimes call this the theory of harm, or the theory of change, of what happens if you do nothing. If you do nothing to change this, what will be the trajectory? What will be the outcome if no one decides to step in? If we're all looking like, well, someone's going to do it, what happens? And so that's the story that you want to think about, or the piece that you want to think about when you're building out your challenge. That really rolls into this next piece, which is going to be your choice. And so you always have roads in our story. We're at these crossroads, and we're thinking about where we're going next, and all these things come together. And so those choice points really are a part of that plot. And the outcome is really, as you're telling a story, the outcome is, what do you want to teach us? Is it what you learned? And if it's what you learned, how can you can you clearly define what it is you learned in that so that you can bring that back into your story by showing us? So not telling us, showing us, expressing how that outcome felt to you. How did you want us to feel after you shared that? And what is happening right now? How does this connect to the urgency of the moment? I share that story today to provide an example of sharing the story in a space to move others, and why you can share a story to help others craft powerful stories, or to move and help others think about things differently. But when you're sharing your story today, as you guys are out lobbying and thinking about that, really think about that key piece. And one of the elements, I think we've heard it a lot, you've heard me say feelings a lot of times today, is what drives you. And those are the emotions behind it. Your fear, your hope, your anger, your values. I heard a question posed to Jabri about what does he do when his values aren't aligned where he's working. And, you know, he said for him, his response is he's not there no more. Adios. So I think, you know, as we think about those emotions, what does that emotion tell you about his values of himself, his values about the world around him, and where he stands on his values? And so I think as we think about those emotions, think about consistently what you feel, what you want others to feel. Stories need to intertwine hope. So whether it's the lack of it and being able to bring it back to how you finally found it, if you're looking for it, being able to bring that element into the story, so it's not just downtrodden, and you're not leaving the listener thinking, well, what's the point even? If it's this bad and there's nothing we can do about it, what's the point? And so you have to infuse hope to pull away from apathy. And then, of course, like we mentioned, values and how those values impact your choices. When we think about emotion and what drives you, I talked about apathy a lot today, but that driver from apathy to anger is action. That driver from fear to hope is action. The driver from self-doubt to self-worth is action. And that driver from moving in isolation to being in a community requires action. And so the biggest takeaway I hope folks can take with when you're intertwining those elements is thinking about how you are using those emotional elements to drive folks to these points: anger, hope, self-worth, and community, and action, and through action. And, you know, as we talked about painting the picture, pivotal moments, vivid details, telling people when and where it happened, and showing people versus telling. I always use this example. It's really easy to say, growing up, my father loved me, or I always knew my father loved me growing up. You could maybe tell a story that tells people some way, growing up, my father always did this thing for me, made me breakfast on Sunday mornings with my favorite things. We talked about finding a way to show people those values, those emotions, those things, versus coming in and saying, you know, these are my values, this is what I believe in, and this is what I stand for, versus saying, this is why I believe in this value. This is why, by showing that in your story and connecting moments to choices and challenges and emotions. And so the key to a powerful story is really connecting these challenging choices we make to these moments while weaving in those emotions. And that's, you know, the task you all are going to have today. Really, I want to leave you with these pointers of ensuring that you're sharing your experience, speaking from the I perspective, Picking 1 to 3 choice points that relate to your calling to be here today. And so, what is your calling to show up today to lobby? What are your choice points that brought you here? That's going to help tie in why you're telling the story. Telling a personal story where you are the main character, as I just mentioned about sharing your experiences, be specific, be vivid, be clear. Hear it, feel it, see it. Don't forget to share what gives you hope. I want to show you guys another amazing example, and I want to ask folks to this story itself.
My name is Selena Barrios Milner. I was born in Caracas, Venezuela. My whole family lived within a mile from where I lived. And on any given day, you know, my mom would drop me off at school. Abuela Margarita would pick me up. We'd come home and eat lunch. And I remember like going up the steps of our apartment building and just smelling like the frying plantains and being so excited to see like who would be having lunch with us that day. And at the age of 6, my mom took my sister and I and ripped us out of this environment and took us to Cincinnati, Ohio. And I just remember going from this environment where I was surrounded by my whole family to going to a place that was cold, where the food tasted like plastic, the cafeteria food, and where I was silenced. You know, I was a super social kid and around my family all the time. And all of a sudden I didn't know English. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have anyone to talk to. And that experience of you know, coming to a different country for a better life, but as a kid, not understanding why, and the challenges that we face and that my mom faced in that process really led me to become an organizer so that other kids like me wouldn't have such a hard time. I've been an organizer for the last 11 years now. And I've most recently worked with the Dreamers, who like me came to this country at a young age and, you know, in search of a better life. As you all know, there's a huge immigration reform campaign. And I really, truly believe that the reason we're even having this conversation and why the Dreamers were able to get administrative relief this past June was because of them sharing their stories.
And so that is a 1 minute and 45-second video of someone taking us through an entire journey, taking us through vivid moments, vivid details. And so I really, and I have to go back and look at the year, but I want to say this video is almost 15 years old, which is really, really crazy times we are in right now. But I will also share this training with folks after folks want to check out this resource. But I'm going to get into our crafting story workshop. I do have to hop right at the hour, but I do I shared a resource that we're going to walk through. But what I would like for folks to do is a storytelling workshop session where you can craft and work with the partner to develop a story. This exercise should be a short exercise that you take a few minutes to do because the power of getting on the bike and trying something new is seeing what you can do in this time frame. And so I want folks to take 5 minutes to plot out your story, your challenge, your choice, and your outcome, and identify your moments and emotions and details. Then I want you to spend 5 minutes crafting your story, weaving in those moments and emotions into your story. Lastly, I would love for you to do a pair share and prepare. And so that is a 5 minutes. One other person, you take 2 minutes to share your story. You hear 30-second reflection, and then the other person takes 2 minutes to share their story, and you give a 30-second reflection. I've provided you all some tools today. And so that looks like a worksheet that has all of these, this exercise outlined. And so I want to just, you guys can, look through this for your guided worksheet. But like I said, take about 1 minute to think about what issues you want to speak to, Think about what stories you have to tell that connect to these issues that you are coming to the Capitol to speak to today. We all may have a different reason that is motivating us, inspiring us, and bringing us to this space. When you go into that 5-minute session, spend 2 minutes plotting out challenge, choice, and outcome. It could be one word. My challenge was no bus. My choice was this, and my outcome was this. Because when you tell the story, it's going to be organic, it's going to be natural, it's not going to be a 5-page essay, but it's going to be you knowing what points you want to hit as you get into this space. And thinking about those moments, as we mentioned, this is where you'll weave it together. The moments are going to be the thing that draw people in to listen to your story. So spending a little bit of time there, to think about that and really crafting it all together. And so you can really think about starting your story with who you are, what do you value, and why you're here. Sharing why there was a challenge, sharing a moment, and share what you're here to discuss. And really think about the choice you made and what you're hoping to achieve with this story that you tell. And so I'm going to also, for the feedback guide, when you do your feedback, the 30-second reflection, there's a couple areas. There is, if you don't think that the person telling the story is maybe reaching the target audience, you may want to ask one of the questions under the audience area. If you think maybe if it went over 2 minutes, it may be too long. So you may want to ask them what can they take away to keep to the main point of their story. If it's too short, do some of these polling questions to kind of get them to think about how to make it longer, that provide more clarity for their call to action. And if they're still not really clear, you can get on those getting clear questions and see if you can help workshop those through each other. And so that is the 15-minute exercise I'm going to ask folks to do and go through that reflection. I'm going to leave you all with just some notes on activating your power and turning your story into an amazing lobby today. Just remember, representatives and their teams are more likely to listen to real people that share their experiences. Your story puts a face and a story behind the reports, the budgets, and the numbers, and your voice deserves to be heard. Before lobbying, think about what story you want to tell, how you can shrink down your story to 1 to 3 minutes, and who your audience will be. While lobbying, always remember, introduce yourself, speak clearly and at a medium pace. If you mess up, just try again and thank them for their time. And when telling your story again, think about your audience, frame it for your audience, and make sure you have a very clear call to action. I want to thank you all for having me here today. I hope that from my training, you are able to think more about why we share our stories, to shift narrative and to tap into our power. I hope you can reflect on what stories stood out to you today and why they stood out, and begin to think about how you weave and incorporate that into your own practice. And I hope that you took note on a challenge, a choice, hope, or any values that stood out to you today. Thank you so much. You can unmute if anyone's talking. Alrighty, thanks guys. I'll be in the app if you have any questions. I will be back online after this next meeting and I can tap in with folks. Good luck on all of your stories today. You guys are gonna kill it.
So thank you so much, Destiny, for sharing your story and a couple stories from others and some skills that we can use later on in the Hill. If you guys don't know, all of the resources she was talking about are on the Whova app, so you all have access to them. And I know a lot of you have already taken a little break, but now would be a great time to get up, stretch. We've been throwing a lot at you. We've been sitting for a while, so I would really recommend doing some chair yoga right now or a little stretching. And then like 5 minutes, then we'll have one more presentation coming up, okay?
How do I set up the computer thing? Like test it out. That's it. Lord. Under the okay.
Test 1, 2. Hey, hey.
Yes. Yeah. My name is Ghulam Rabbani. Yeah, I'm from Washington University of Science and Technology, and I'm adjunct professor of that university, and I'm working for political social work. And because I am implementing social work politics in Bangladesh and learning how to implement this social work in the third world country. So my research area is social work with politics. And that is very important that from micro level to macro level, how to indicate and integrate that political performance for the politicians and the social workers. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay.
We're going to be getting started soon. If everyone can return to their seats, please. We'll be getting started soon again.
Testing, check 1 2. Testing, check 1 2. Can everybody hear me online?
Get started, everyone. If you can return to your seats, please. We got one more presentation. Thanks, everyone. Oh, this is awesome. Okay, quick.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think they're next to each other. Appreciate it. Alrighty. Like 30 seconds for everyone to sit, please. Maybe 20 seconds, we'll see. All right, I lied. It wasn't 20 seconds. It's going to be right now. Okay. All right, so I can direct everyone's attention up here. Thank you so much, everyone. If we can sit and settle down, we're going to move to our next presentation from the NASW, talking about some of the bills we'll be talking about today and what to do within the meetings and those contexts. So give it up for NASW.
There we are. Hi, everyone. Pleasure to see you all again. We're going to give you a little bit of a brief overview of what to expect when you actually go to your Hill visits, and then do a brief overview of the bills that we're going to talk about. So I want to start off with a little bit of an overview about NASW. Then we're going to move into political engagement, social workers on Capitol Hill, and then really what to expect and how to maximize your meetings. And then we're going to finish up going through the legislation briefly before you ascend to Capitol Hill. So first, I want to give you a little bit of an overview of NASW as a whole. So there are a few separate entities that fall under the NASW, the National Association for Social Workers umbrella. There is our national office, which is located here in this building on the 8th floor. We have our foundation that we share space with in the same office suite. We also have 54 state chapters throughout the United States. Some states have multiple chapters, or we have other entities such as Puerto Rico. The other entity we have is NASW PACE, which is our political action for candidate elections. This is our political action committee. It is a separate segregated fund, meaning we can only take donations from NASW members, including student members. And this actually helps us build relationships on Capitol Hill with elected officials that really champion our legislation, as well as fund state-level PACs for state and local politicians and political elected officials that are champions at the state level for us as well. I want to give you a little bit of a brief overview of us as a staff as a whole. I'm Jeremy Haynes, as you met earlier. Joining me today are Dina Kastner, MSS, and MLSP, excuse me, I can't talk fast because I'm a Southerner, who is our public policy and advocacy manager, been with NASW for over 20 years. Rachel Boyer, MSW, who is just recently promoted, and I want to give her a shout out to Senior Policy Associate. They are both very integral pieces to NASW's policy staff. What you see on this stage is the policy staff as a whole. So we are 3 people, we have lives, so we try to do as much as we possibly can in the 24 hours we have in a day, as well as have our personal lives. So I want to take an opportunity to give you a brief overview of the actions that NASW takes on some of our issues and how we really engage with elected officials in that big white building behind me. So first is we help draft legislation, and this is both from a NASW-led legislation perspective as well as other legislation that impacts broader communities or groups in Washington, D.C. For instance, we have a bill that was recently introduced yesterday that would increase reimbursement for those that are going into clinical social work who see Medicare beneficiaries. Next, we engage in coalition partners in supporting key legislation. This is an integral part to advocacy work in Washington, D.C. I can tell you every organization out there in Washington, D.C. has an association. You can think of them. One that I actually like to highlight is the confectioners. Those pastry chefs actually have their own association here in Washington, D.C. and have legislative and lobbying staff just like you do here at NASW. We endorse legislation and we provide quotes. We give endorsements through letters, through quotes, through different activities. And this kind of goes hand in hand with signing on to letters in support of opposition with coalition partners to really show that united voice around an issue. You'll be going to the Hill today on advocating on a few different issues, one specifically around everything with the professional designation of social workers. And we have endorsed a lot of pieces of legislation as well as showed opposition to the Department of Education through our comments about the de-designation of social workers as a profession. So those are one things. And the last but not least is we mobilize social workers through our grassroots advocacy as well as our interactions on a daily basis. We actually have a advocacy day attached to our annual meeting in June. And if you have the opportunity and are planning to come to that, please consider signing up and joining us on the Hill. This will give you another opportunity to progress those relationships that you've probably heard about throughout the day and throughout your time here. Right from here, I'm going to turn it over to Dina, who's going to talk a little bit more about our political action and engagement.
Thanks, Jeremy. So we have a QR code here, and this is for our advocacy listserv. So if you're interested in joining our advocacy listserv, gives you an opportunity to get an editable email about specific legislation that's moving in Congress or has just been introduced. And then you can send it directly to the right staff with your member of Congress or your senators and your senators. And I also put little cards out on the counter out there with the link to the how to sign up for the advocacy listserv. So this is really important for social workers to be able to share their voices. So you're here today to talk to members of Congress and their staff, but when you're back home, you can also do that through our advocacy listserv and some other actions. So today you're working on getting to know your elected officials and their staff. And that's something that's critical, is developing that relationship with the staff and the members of Congress or in your state legislatures. You can respond to action alerts. When you're at home, you can attend town hall meetings. A lot of members of Congress will have town hall meetings to hear from their constituents about issues that are of importance to them back in the district. You can also set up an in-district meeting. So if you didn't get a chance to meet with one of your representatives, or if you don't get a chance to do that today, you can do that back home, either in the state office for your senators or the district office for your representative. And then you always want to recruit your friends and family to get involved. If there's some issue that's of importance to you, it may be of importance to your friends and family, and you can definitely get them to be activated as well. Just want to remember that you are an expert as a social work student. You know the clients that you work with or the setting that you're in. You know your community. And that is really needed on Capitol Hill, is that firsthand knowledge of what's happening in the community and what the needs are in the community. And then legislators need to hear from trusted sources. So when you do meet with a member of Congress or their staff, you want to make sure that you give them accurate information. The worst thing that could happen is you could tell a staffer or a member of Congress something that's not true, and they go to the House floor or the Senate floor and say something that's not actually accurate. So you want to make sure you're a trusted source. And that goes along with if they ask you a question and you don't know the answer to it, you just want to say, I don't know that answer, but I will research it and get back to you, and then follow up and get back to them. They understand that you might not know everything that they ask about, but they do appreciate if you're honest about what you know and what you don't know. And then you want to just always think about meeting with members of Congress who you're a constituent of. And I think someone talked about this earlier today, that it's really important to, I think it was Jeremy actually, oh, Charles. Yeah, that we our tax dollars pays for the members of Congress and their staff, and you are their boss. So just to remember that. We do have 2 social workers in Congress currently, Representative Sylvia Garcia, who's chair of the Congressional Social Work Caucus, and Representative Hillary Skolton, who's from Michigan. And these 2 women are great champions for us, and so we do work with them on a number of different things. And I'll let Rachel talk about one of those things. Oh, sorry.
Hi, good afternoon. Rachel Boyer. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to maximize your congressional meetings. So first, some tips. I don't know how many of you all have been up to the Hill, but it can get a little confusing. Both sides of Congress have 3 different office buildings where your meetings are taking place. So the Senate office buildings are Dirksen, Russell, and Hart. The House office buildings are Cannon, Longworth, and Rayburn. The floors in Longworth and Rayburn are the 2nd digit of the office number. So, for example, 1239 in Longworth is on the 2nd floor, and 2327 Rayburn is on the 3rd floor. So, just a little tip. But honestly, if you get lost or if you need help, there's signs posted kind of all over the building, and Capitol Police are always there to direct you to wherever you want to go. So before your meeting, I think you all have like a little bit of time before you meet with folks, but figure out of the group who's going, figure out who's going to talk first about each bill that you're going to be speaking about. That just kind of saves time and, make sure that no one's talking over each other. And take a second to look up to see if the member that you're meeting with has signed on to the legislation you're about to talk about, because then it can be like a thanks for signing on, or this is an opportunity for you to tell them why they need to sign on. And then look to see if the bill has been referred to the committee that the member sits. So both of those things can be accomplished by using congress.gov, but especially if you think that the member has already sponsored it, you can also look on their website. That will tell you, A, what committees they sit on, and B, if they're proud of what they've done, they'll tell you, oh, hey, we signed on to this thing and we put out a press release for it. So those are 2 very easy to access, very free websites for you to visit before your meeting, just to make sure that you go in with the best knowledge possible. So when you're in these meetings, you have about 20 to 30 minutes for everybody. So you want to make sure that at least everyone in the room gets to introduce themselves. I know that the presentation before was talking about storytelling and making sure you're bringing your voice and your experience into the room. That is wonderful, and I love how the last example was under 2 minutes. I think even shorter for an introduction would be great, just to make sure that everyone, I know that some of y'all are in some bigger meetings, so just making sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak and give their connection either to why you chose social work, why you're there to talk about the bill, or why it was super important for you to come and be a part of the CRISP Day of Action. So during the meeting, like I said, most are going to be 20 to 30 minutes long. The staffer may not know very specifically about, I know that my boss is on this bill, or I know exactly where they stand on this specific issue, but they'll know kind of broadly, yes, my boss supports access to education. My boss supports these things. You're going to meet with a myriad of folks. It could be a staff assistant, it could be an intern, it could be the legislative assistant, could be the chief of staff, it's basically whoever's available to speak about this issue to the group. So that's why there's going to be a wide variety of understanding and knowledge of this specific issue. Make sure you review your ask. So when you're in these, when you're kind of prepping for these meetings, make sure you have 1 to 3 bullet points. I would say closer to 1, further from 3, about why you want the member to sign on, especially relating it to your personal experience. And then, like Dina said, if you don't know the answer to a question, don't make it up. But they're also, the staffer that you're going to meet with, or if you meet with a member, they're used to people telling them, I don't know, but I'm willing to follow up and research that for you. They want that because they want specific numbers. They want facts so that when they do go to the floor, when they are doing a hearing, they can give that specific information. And then after the meeting, just like you would do after an interview or after any other kind of professional conversation, you send an email, send the staffer an email to follow up saying thank you. And then if you did say you were going to look up any information, that's the perfect time to send them that information or if you found an organization that has that information, connect them with the source. So even if it's, okay, you are your placement is someone that would have that information, but you don't have the exact number, you can connect them to your boss, your supervisor at your organization. So, yeah. I'm gonna pass it back to Dina to go over some of the bills that you all are gonna talk about today.
So these are some bills that either NASW is supporting or has been in your agenda for talking up at the Hill about. So the first bill that I want to talk about is HR 4185, which is the Integrating Social Workers Across Healthcare Settings Act. And this basically allows social workers to be able to bill for services for which their scope of practice is covered at the state level. So just making sure that social workers can provide those services to Medicare beneficiaries. And this is sponsored by Representatives Jen Kiggins from Virginia, Danny Davis from Illinois, and Brittany Pedersen from Colorado. So it is a bipartisan bill, and they are working on getting more co-sponsors for the bill. You met this morning Michael Collins, who was the Chief of Staff for former Congressman John Lewis, and there's a bill named after Congressman John Lewis called the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act of 2025. And this one is sponsored by Congresswoman Terry Sewell from Alabama. She's actually a member of Congress who hires a lot of social workers on her staff. So if you are interested in working on Capitol Hill, you may want to consider talking to her office. Every Democrat is a co-sponsor of this bill, and it would basically restore and modernize protections of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which has been struck down. Crucial pieces of it has been struck down since in 2013, and then states have enacted voting laws that have been restrictive. And then wanted to talk a little bit about student loan disparities. Public Law 11921, which was a result of what's called the One Big Beautiful Bill, which was the reconciliation bill in Congress, established that graduate programs and professional programs would have different student debt loan limits. And so the limits are lower for graduate programs than they are for professional programs. When they passed the law, they used a code that listed 10 professions that are considered professions, but they said that they were examples of professional degrees and not limited to. The Department of Education, when they did their rulemaking, decided to limit it to just those professions that would be considered professional degrees. And that was through their rulemaking process, and they did add clinical psychology, but they didn't add any other professions, right? Exactly. And so there have been a number of bills in Congress that have been introduced to try and rectify this problem. So I'm going to just go through them pretty quickly, but just so you know what bills are out there. First is the Loan Equity for Advanced Professions Act, and that's sponsored by Representative Tim Kennedy from New York. And this would raise the limits for graduate programs to be equal to that of professional programs. So just getting everyone back on the same footing as we have been for years. And so that would bring it up to $50,000 per year or $200,000 over a lifetime. So that's what that bill does. And then there is Congressman Richie Torres, also from New York, and Senator Angela Alsobrooks from Maryland have both introduced the Professional Degree Restoration Act. And this rescinds all the One Big Beautiful Bill Act changes and reverting it back to the loan limits that we had before the bill. And then it also would restore the Grad Plus loans, which allows people to borrow up to what the costs are for attending. So it includes things like housing and food and that sort of thing. Representative Michael Lawler, who's a Republican from New York, has a bill, and that's called the Professional Student Degree Act, and that adds particular professions to the list of professional degrees, including social work. HR 6862 is the Protecting Healthcare Workforce Pipeline Act, and that's by Representative Josh Harder from California. And it adds a category of programs to be considered professional, and it would result in most, if not all, health professions being included in the professional designation. And then two more bills. One is the Clarity and Professional Degree Act, and that's with Representative Debbie Dingell from Michigan. And that also includes social work under the designation of a professional degree. And then just yesterday or the day before, I think it was the day before yesterday, Representative Joe Courtney introduced a bill which doesn't have a title yet, but it would eliminate interest on student loans, establish an education affordability trust fund, and increase annual and aggregate student loan limits. So those are some bills that would be good to talk about in your meetings if that's something that you want to communicate about. So now we have time, I think we have some time for questions. So if anyone wants to go to the mics, we're happy to take questions.
Hi again. My name is Anel Garcia from UNC. I have a question. Since you all are kind of representing the NASW, does it ever get challenging, and how specifically do you all navigate that sort of space whenever policies may be enacting harm on marginalized communities, or where in an interest of convergence, I guess not giving away too much and staying true to our code of ethics. I was just curious about going about that space.
So I would preface this, I've been with NASW 3 months. But in my short time here, I've had conversations with our chief of programs, as well as had email conversations back and forth with our CEO. And that's one of our big struggles here at NASW, is that balance between the professional side of social work and doing things for the social work community, like reimbursement, student loans, professional designations, workplace safety, a lot of those issues that are in the professional world, as well as balancing our social justice portfolio and making sure we're staying true to ourselves and how we do those. I will mention something, and this may come off the wrong way, so I apologize in advance. What we hear on the news and what you see in the media is not truly what takes place on Capitol Hill a lot of the times. A lot of members, regardless of what party they are, want to pass legislation. As we see that, we see someone like Jen Kiggins, who is a Republican from the Virginia Beach, Norfolk area, and Danny Davis, who is a Democrat from the state of Illinois, working together on a piece of legislation. You would think the strange bedfellows metaphor is well at play. I mean, we have a bipartisan, the bill I'm currently working on, which is Medicare reimbursement for clinical social workers, has that bipartisan support. We stay true to this, back to your question of the social justice portfolio, we stay true to that because we think about what impact it has and how we can find our voice as these issues arise. I know there's a lot of things around immigration and voting rights and affordable housing. How can we have a voice in that and make our voice heard without, I hate saying it this way, alienating ourselves on Capitol Hill? So there is a true balance there, and we take all of those things, our code of ethics, into account when we do.
Hi, I'm Evelyn Tomaszewski from George Mason University. And Dina, thank you so much for that overview. We're literally going to run over to the Hill and do some talking. What would be a couple talking points that could capture all those things around deprofessionalization and ensuring that social workers are recognized as professionals, and all that you just gave in all those slides? A couple of quick talking points would be fantastic.
Yeah. Sure. So I think the main talking point is that social work has been a profession for over 100 years, and the fact that Congress decided to put a limit on loans for graduate and professional degrees and have lower limits for graduate degrees doesn't mean that the Department of Education should be able to alienate all the professions that have been professions. It's not only social workers, it's nurses, it's marriage and family therapists, it's occupational therapists, it's physical therapists, yeah, accountants and architects. So there's a number of different professions that aren't being considered. And I think you can talk about what you do at your school, what kind of education you take, what kind of time commitment it is, that you have internships, which are often unpaid, and that you are preparing for a field that has licensure and that is critical for serving communities.
I'm gonna jump in real quick. If everyone has a 2 p.m. meeting, please go now. As for talking points, and I'll talk about this in a minute for later meetings, we do have a couple sheets in the countertop that has some talking points you can talk about with the legislators. But then you can go back to questions.
Okay. So I see one more question.
Yes. Hi, I'm Molly. I'm a dual degree in macro social work and educational leadership student at Boston University. And I wanted to hear you guys' thoughts and advice on how we communicate social work policy issues to people who aren't social workers in Congress or who don't hire social workers, who maybe don't know what social workers do. So these kind of issues and bills that we're asking them to sign on to, co-sponsor, whatever it is about social work, how do we communicate it to folks who maybe don't have a background or don't really know much about it?
What's that?
So I answer this question this way. Speak in analogies. Talk in a way that if they can find something very commonplace that they can understand. Example I'll use from my previous career, and I know my colleagues have heard me use this, but it's the best analogy. Used to work for amputees, so people with limb loss and limb difference. But go into a Hill office and make an argument or talk to state level legislators about an issue, I'd say, if you got in a car accident today, you could go to the hospital and you injure your knee. You can go to the hospital and get a knee replacement. Your insurance company is going to cover that. But if you get in the same car accident and you have a knee injury and you have compartment syndrome and they have to amputate your leg, you're going to go out of the hospital in a wheelchair. You're not going to get a prosthetic. You're not going to be able to live the life you did an hour before that car accident. You're not going to be able to go for a run that night, things along those lines. And when you can talk in ways like that people can put themselves in a situation and simple analogies, it really makes it a lot easier for people, for staff, for legislators, the general public to understand. And that's a really good example. That's a good way I can.
I think the only thing I would add to that is that part of why it's so great that you all are going into these meetings is you get to share what social work is. And that is a big part of that education of these members is social work is not just child welfare. And especially as a macro social worker, you can talk about how, your client being a system is a way to utilize those skills and put it in kind of that perspective of, okay, I have these great skills. I see things from a different perspective. Or from a unique perspective, and I see why these things are happening. And that's because I'm a social worker. So bring it back to who you are as a social worker and your perspective as a social worker. And I think that is one of the things that kind of makes you an expert in the office, but also just makes you kind of a unique visit to the office as well.
Yeah, and I think just starting with some of the basics about what social work is and what social workers are. A lot of times when you go up to the Hill, you'll talk to staffers and they're like, oh, I have a sister who's a social worker, or I have a mom who's a social worker, or an uncle, or whatever. And so sometimes they do know social work, but maybe just at more of a cursory level. So really talking about what it is and what you do and how you do it.
Hi, I'm Keisha Brayhop, and I am at UD, my BSW. I wanted to start. I'm from Washington, and I wanted to start like a channel on for residents. There's a lot of residents that don't have a lot of resources. don't know. And I wanted to start it. With you being from Nassau, would that be against the ethics or something like that? As a, once I get my license, how would you feel about social media? I'm getting public, but I'm against not reliable that they need. And I just noticed it's just a big gap in research.
Yeah, I don't see why that would be a problem to use your platform to help individuals get access to the resources that they need.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you guys are from Nassau, so I just want to make sure that I'm not violating the code of ethics. So I'm learning. I'm going to my Catholic university. I was accepted there.
Congratulations.
So I just want to make sure that I'm just doing everything the right way. I'm coming up in a different.
Yeah, and we do have an Office of Ethics and Professional Review. If you're a member of NASW, they do consultations. So if you ever come up with a question about something ethical that you think might not be quite right, you can call for a consultation. And if there's
I'm so sorry. Speaking of that really quick, I'm a student. I'm being honest. I'm broke. I don't got no money. So do y'all waive fees, or how does that work for students? Because I'm being honest. Right now, I don't have the finances. I'm being honest.
Yeah. So our normal membership fees are $236 a year, but for students, they're $60 a year.
Okay.
So we have a huge discount for students. Plus, if you join as a student and then you keep your dues for 2 years or 3 years, you get transitional dues. So they're not quite as high for the first couple of years out of school.
Okay. And for each.
Yeah, it's a good resource to have. You get connections to other social workers, professionals who have been in the field for a long time and who can also ask questions like this too. So it's a great opportunity. Sure. Well, thank you, everybody. It was great to be in the room with you, and good luck with everything.
Alrighty, thank you all for those tips. So I know everyone kind of saw most of the room filed out, but I have a couple announcements for like our next steps for the rest of the afternoon. So if you got an email from us regarding like which congressperson you are going to be meeting with, it tells you the address, the time, and it also will have like, I don't know if it tells you who else is in the meeting with you, does it? Yep. So if you want to, you can organize via the Whova app and like get to know those people to organize how you get there and get to the meetings and who's talking and things like that. If you didn't receive an email, there'll be trainings going on here on the 8th floor. You'll have to go down to the 1st floor and then back up to the 8th floor because of like the security of the elevator. And then some of the information, like I was saying earlier, there's like pamphlets on the back counter with some of the talking points about some of these bills that we just learned about. So you can use that. I recommend if you can, like one person per group have the talking points so that there's not a lot of copies of them. And then there will be a reception back here around 3:30 with like pizza and mingling and networking afterwards. And yeah, so for that, you're free to either go to the next set of trainings or head over to the Hill. Yeah.